Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Canutillo Convos, the official Canutillo ISD podcast. I'm Gustavo Reveles, the Director of Communications for the school district, and I'm here with our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Galaviz. Dr. Galaviz, we're on location.
We are.
We
might be like stars now. TMZ.
Well, definitely.
TMZ was out there and I walked into the FBI.
We are on location at the FBI headquarters here in El Paso, on South Mesa Hills, and we're very happy to have received a call several weeks ago from the FBI here in El Paso to kind of come on board and talk to us about joining the podcast to talk about a very serious topic that's been impacting schools for several weeks, really, for years now, which is the potential of violent threats to our schools. School districts have been coping with this issue for years now, Doc, and the FBI has played a critical role in trying to prevent it, and unfortunately, when it happens, trying to react to it as well. We have two special guests with us today.
We have
Three. We have Jeanette who helped us set it up here, but we have Mr. Edgar Cruz, who's the Assistant Special Agent in charge here in El Paso. Welcome.
Edgar Hoover.
And we have Special Agent Valerie Venegas as well.
Yeah, he's carrying a gun.
Well, that's what FBI agents do. And Mr. Cruz, thank you so much for letting us in. Oh, and we also have Chief Kluge, of course, our very own Canutillo ISD Chief of Police. How could I forget?
Because he lives in New Mexico.
Yeah, he does live in New Mexico. We won't talk about that. But we in Texas, obviously, this is top of mind. School violence and the threat of active shooters, given what happened in Uvalde, what happened in Santa Fe. And here in El Paso, obviously, we're still very raw about the August 3rd events. Our schools reacted to that as well. Having this happen very close to some of our schools as well. What is the role of the FBI when it comes to a threat of violence, or unfortunately, the occurrence of violence in schools?
Sure. Yes, sir. Well, the FBI is, obviously, it's a concern for us as a community to have any threats or any potential harm to the community, and we're committed to working with our local state partners to address any threats, hoax, or obviously, worse yet, any actual threats. So we're committed to identifying those and mitigating those threats, and then work with the partners to hopefully identify those behind those and bring those, bringing them to justice if we can identify those.
And Doc, we talk a lot about, response plans, emergency plans that the school districts are not just required to do so, but work very hard to develop. And people think that this is something that, just our chief of police handles with the help of the police officers and security guards we have. But this is really a collaboration, right, Chief Kluge? This is, when something happens in our schools, and we've seen it, it takes several agencies to respond to it.
Yeah, so the main thing is networking. You got to be proactive. We can no longer be reactive to any of these situations. We got to be proactive. Here at our district, Canutillo, working with Dr. Reyes, we're doing a very good proactive program, the behavioral threat assessment. Agent Venegas actually reached out to us, and she's put all of the ISDs in the county together, and we're having monthly meetings now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it's the networking. Their help is invaluable for us. The FBI, it's invaluable. Any agency's help is invaluable. We also have, like, for example, San Eli. It's a smaller school district, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, we can help them. They can help us with the help of the FBI, Agent Venegas.
So I guess I want to ask, because I know we deal with social media. Mm-hmm. And social media, when someone says they're going to, bring something bad to school or something's going to happen, how is that consumed resources? I know for us, because again, you just can't take, when someone says they're going to do something bad to a school or a kid, we all go. I mean, how do you all play in that role, or how do you all assess threats and
Sure. So whenever there is a threat, whether it's online, however it is communicated, right? In this day and age, everybody gets it, right? Because it's on social media. It's going to be, you're going to get calls to PD. You're going to get, however it is, it's going to be communicated in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to go to many and multiple agencies. And so what we're seeing is our local, state, and our federal partners, we're all going to respond to it and figure out what's going on, because you're right, we can't just take it for granted, right? We can't just say, oh, it's just a social media post, maybe they're not. No, we have to respond to every single one because it might be the one, right? And so it takes a lot of resources. It takes our analysts, it takes our investigators, it takes the stress from educators, right, also. And so it takes a whole community for each one of these threats.
And one thing that's important for parents to understand, is something I learned in my time doing public relations for school district, is the importance of reporting and not adding to these social media threats. A lot of times people think that they're doing a service by sharing a public threat, right? They saw something on Snapchat, they saw something and they share it thinking like, oh, I'm alerting someone. But when in reality what they're doing is making it harder for you guys and your teams to track down the source of the threat. So what tips do you give students and parents whenever they encounter a potential threat or a perceived threat on social media?
If you see a threat on social media or you hear of any threat, report it to the proper authorities. Report it, if you're a student, report it to your teacher, report it to security, to the SROs there at the school, report it to the police, report it to somebody, right? But don't just share it on social media. The people that need to know need to have that information.
And by going on social media, you actually are perhaps creating additional anxiety, right, by reposting those threats online versus contacting law enforcement or the school. So we would encourage them to contact law enforcement to report that information.
Yeah.
Right, and we had a good example of that about a month ago, Gus.
Right.
There was a threat at Chaparral High School in New Mexico. Bus, you know where New Mexico is? There was a threat. There was a threat, and the social media page was called CHS, and I forget the rest of it, but people confused Chaparral High School with Canutillo High School, so we were getting calls, what's going on with this threat, what's happening, so.
And actually, I see that happening a lot, Chief, where these threats are for the most part, vague and without any sort of base. They're meant to cause alarm. They're not really meant to warn that something's going to happen. And they're vague in the sense that we're like PHS, CHS, RHS, and they do that, right, with the intent of having it spread widely, and because how many CHSs are there in the country, right? It could be any CHS. In El Paso alone, there's Canutillo, Clint, Coronado, take your pick, and that's just in El Paso. So that's the whole purpose of this thing, is to cause chaos and cause concern, knowing full well that people are on edge when it comes to school violence right now. We've been fortunate in El Paso that while obviously August 3rd was an unfortunate event, but when it comes to school violence, we haven't had anything that hit us, but it could, it really could. I mean, no community is immune. Doc, you talk about this all the time about how this our preparedness should not be if it happens, but rather when it happens.
But, because you think of a kid, right? We're all high school, 1984, I graduated, I'm probably the oldest one here. But when a kid makes a threat, how can school systems do the learning for the other kids to say, hey, dude, that's serious. You just can't, this isn't about crying over spilled milk, because when, I always tell parents, your kid, you'll forgive us for the A of the B or being sent home because they didn't eat, but you won't forgive us if they don't come home. And in Uvalde, we have kids that are not going home. We have teachers. So what's the learning that we can do as school systems to tell kids in a way that it's not cool to say you're going to hurt a school or you're going to do something bad?
Well, I think it's a multifaceted problem, in the sense that one of the great things that y'all are doing right is that you do have that behavioral threat assessment team, right? And so you're taking a look at these threats, you're taking a look at students of interest and even staff of interest. We have to remember that even our coworkers, everybody has a hard time, right? Everybody has different mental health capabilities. We've all had a bad day, right? And it's whether or not we can cope in some way, shape, or form with that. And students are still trying to figure that out, right? As they're learning, as they're growing, as they're maturing. And so, unfortunately, social media is one way that children and students express themselves nowadays, right? And they might feel more comfortable with that. So it's a whole community. It's educating about mental health, right? Educating on coping mechanisms, but also educating that, hey, instead of saying, oh, they're just having a bad day, hey, what's really going on? And really paying attention to those warning signs and really talking about it as a group and looking at that individual as a person, as opposed to maybe just student A, student B, right? Because we're all different.
You know, I love that. I love what you said, because it's not, and again, I simplified it, and I apologize for simplifying, because it's deeper than just, hey, don't make threats and do a campaign and, you know, what's that, throw trash or Smokey the Bear, or don't fire, right? Don't
Only you
pollute,
can
don't
prevent.
pollute,
Right.
yeah, who don't pollute and all that. But it's deeper. It's
getting to the root.
Yeah, it's getting to the root. And again, I apologize for simplifying it, because really I'm thinking of, oh, just all we're stickers, don't, and it's not. It's recognizing even staff that when you see their eyes, when you see them walking, their body language, you say, hey, good morning, thank you for the smile, what's going on, you okay? And knowing them individually as people. So,
Well, you know, and I do appreciate your comments on reaching them where they're at, because, you know, we can, we talk a lot about hotlines, right? Giving them a number to call, and thinking about teenagers. They don't like to talk on the phone, but they'll text you.
Right.
They'll send you a snap message or whatever it is that they do. I'm too old for all that stuff. But like recognizing where the kids are and meeting them there, so that we're giving them tools that they will actually use.
Absolutely. And now the good part is that a lot of applications and a lot of things have evolved, right? Because you're right. As far as I'm concerned, the Snapchat and all of these that I don't know how to use.
Yeah.
But the kids, that's what they use, right? So that's why 911 now accepts
Text.
those
Yeah.
via text. And you have the text line, the crisis text line, which is as simple as if you open up your phone and you look and it's 74, you just go straight down the line and you will be connected with a counselor within 32 seconds, I believe. And it's texting, right? And so it's those great mechanisms, but also a lot of school districts. You have, there's so many school districts and so many, even DPS, there are so many applications out there where they can reach out by the press of a button. But it's also just that human aspect, right? Teachers know when their student's not right. You get that spidey sense, but we spend so much time at work, we all know when our coworker's not right. Like, hey, what's really going on?
Right.
And sometimes it makes us uncomfortable asking those questions because you're really asking about something personal. But we have to get over it and really say, hey, how are you doing? No, really.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Because we might get into a conversation, a nitty-gritty conversation, but times are tough right now. We are just getting over a pandemic, and as educators, there was a significant impact to our student population, right? But also our educators and the workforce having to come back scared, but am I going to get COVID? Am I not going to get COVID? Maybe they lost somebody financially, right? And then now you have the threats of these school shootings. That's a lot to handle.
but even now, like, we're sitting with masks, right? Because of the mandate. Because you're thinking, hey, it's New Year's, it's party, let's go, everybody out, let's go to New Orleans. But then it's still here. And even for myself, I felt, son of, you get frustrated, you get angry. Because it's like, no, I'm with the mask, I can't see your faces, I can't see your smiles. And,
It's the burnout.
yeah, you get burnt out, and you try to tell kids, and like, how do you? It's still there, and I think, but I agree with you. It's about just being real with each other. And it's okay to to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated.
It is perfectly okay to have an emotion. It is perfectly okay to have a bad day, to be angry, to be sad. That is a valid emotion, and you are perfectly within your right to have those days. It's how we cope with those days.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to get better.
And it's heartening to know that we are talking about mental health in a much more open manner now. and making resources available to all of us, right? To making sure that our mental health needs are being met, just like our physical health needs are. We're in the last, definitely since the pandemic, I've seen a turnaround in how people are speaking openly about potential issues they might have, people seeking or reaching out for help and resources. So that's good. It's, people are responding to that, but it still might be taboo for some people, and we got to work with
Sure, especially in our culture, right? No te metas.
Right.
You know what? That's what I was thinking, bro. I was thinking in our culture, right? In our culture, I said, hombre, to be mad.
And it's funny because speaking with my elderly parents, they're in their 80s, and the difference between my mom, who has to yes, she sees a therapist and recognizes the need of it, and my dad still saying, no, you're not me. That's not for me. That's not for me. But knowing full well that he could benefit from that, but it's hard to change minds, right? But that change is happening, and that change is coming little by little. And
So I see Agent Cruz. I see you with some notes.
Sir?
Come on, let's hear them.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway, these aren't jokes. There's different motivations for creating these. Was actually an intended, thought to harm somebody, or because they're venting the stresses that we have in life. But these are serious. These are serious incidents. They draw resources from law enforcement away from actual emergency. So that's not good for the community. And then there's a cry for help, as Valerie talked about. Just a concern for those. So from the community perspective, what we'd ask is that if you see something, say something. Let someone know. From our perspective, there's a consequence also to the individual. This young adult could be charged with a felony. So we want to hopefully get ahead of these things and to address that, but we're concerned both the community and these individuals as well. So I think it's a holistic approach, and so there's a lot to it, right? It's not a simple problem.
and I'm glad you brought up the consequences, because a lot of times when we're dealing, and Chief, you know this better than most of us, when we're dealing with a kid that made a threat and meant it as a joke, but that joke resulted in the entire police force coming out, with the FBI coming out, with schools shutting down, with the resources of the entire school district being set just because he's made a statement. These jokes have consequences. And I know as a school district, while we take this very seriously and we understand kids are kids, we also understand that we can't take this lightly. And we will prosecute kids that make threats to school, even if it's a joke.
Yeah, we certainly will. I mean, we have to take it serious. And going forward, the way they deal with it is how it's going to affect them in the end. But, again, what we were talking about earlier, we got to get to the root of the problem, Sometimes they say, oh, it's a joke. But when we sit down and talk to them, you know what, I don't feel like I fit in. I was trying to act cool for these guys to accept me. So I made that comment. That's an actual case that I had.
Right.
So, like I said, the BTAC stuff, the behavioral threat assessment team, that's something that I'm 100% on board. The days of running, gunning, kicking down doors, throwing down cuss and putting them in jail, all you're doing is putting a bandage on a gaping wound. We can't do that no more. We got to get down to the core. Why did he do that? And then often those kids and even adults, they open up and they give us information. And that's how we can network and be proactive about it.
Great, yeah.
So we're about to go on break. Our last day is the 15th. And what do you want to tell parents or kids during these? Because, I always, as a former principal, even as a superintendent, sometimes our kids love coming to school because that's when they get their routine. They know for sure they're going to be fed. They know mom and dad because we're their mommy and daddy during those 8 hours. And during these 2 weeks, they don't have us. So what do you want to tell parents and kids during these holidays, besides be safe, be healthy, be happy? What are some advice that you have to the moms and dads and the kids out there.
Sure. I mean, there are certainly resources. You know, the holidays they can be a hard time, right? And so there are resources out there within the community, but also, you know, nationally. And if you're having a hard time, reach out. Reach out. It's okay to reach out and say, you know what, I need help today. And there's so many, you know, there are so many resources within the community, and a lot of us, you know, sometimes it just takes a little digging to find them, but they're there. They're there, and so we can certainly, as if we work together, that's certainly something that we can, that both parents and students can work toward. These 2 weeks are a little change in structure. I know even my kids, I've got 3 kids elementary school age, and the change in structure, they kind of go a little crazy, right? And so I try to keep some sort of structure in the home. But at the end of the day, do the best you can. But doing the best you can is good enough. And if you need that extra help, absolutely call the crisis line. You know, you can call the crisis line, you can call the crisis text line as well. There are so many resources out there, and you have them there.
And I think the crisis hotline number is 988. Just like you dial 911, you can dial 988. And
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah, that's started just a couple of months ago, right?
It's new.
Really?
Yeah, it's fairly new.
We didn't put that out.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
But we'll do it again.
I'll do
They're on it. They're on it.
Yeah.
988. That's
988.
I was thinking like 1-800 reach out.
No, that's too long now. See, kids, that's too long now. It's we need short and pithy. But
What did you say? Short of what?
pithy.
Pithy. The word of the day.
Agent Cruz?
No, I would just, as Val said, if you're a parent or family member and you see some signs or indications that, you know, your child's experiencing some problems, engage and address that, right? You know, and talk about it. The proper way to express that and be responsible on social media and talk about this. You know, education is a piece of just being engaged early on, and then, as Val said, there's those resources, you know, as things kind of escalate. But we did encourage folks to pay attention and be engaged.
And don't be afraid to report it to law enforcement. I hear from a lot of parents, I don't want to report my kid because I'm afraid they're going to go to jail. Law enforcement has taken a massive shift, right? So as Chief Kluge mentioned, you know, it's not always just handcuffs and throw away the key, right? It's not just that. Now we're looking at it from a completely different perspective. And so we are that resources, and we need the community to understand that. And really, we are looking we are looking for success. We are looking for success for that person to thrive in the community. And we're going to try to figure out how that is. Now, are there some instances where there might be legal ramifications? Absolutely. There are consequences to the choices that we make. But let's make that good choice.
Right.
Let's reach out.
Yeah, this is really cool. This is really cool. And for the record, I'm not being arrested.
Yet.
The chief's got handcuffs.
For the viewers, for the listeners at home.
Well, you know, Special Agent Venegas and Special Agent Cruz, thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you for
Ms. Harper, thank you so much for setting this up and reaching out to us to be part of
I'd like
this.
to invite you in 2023 to come to our law enforcement academy, because they our class, because they were just like, because I said, I go to FBI. Oh, cool, mister. Cool,
Absolutely.
mister.
Yeah,
Just to
we
share
have a
with-
thriving
Especially
program.
for Latinas, right?
Yeah.
Because there's like 5 girls in there.
I'm there.
You know?
I'm there.
And
Great.
Cruz, Agent, you can bring your notes too.
That's how you get to assistant special agent in charge with notes. Great. Well,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you.
We are going to take a break from the podcast. We will see you guys in the new year. You know, so everybody have a safe break, and we'll see you in January. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy holidays. Thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
I do know where New Mexico is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lida. Thank you.
Thank you.